Deep beneath the rugged soil of Oak Island, history was about to be rewritten. Rick Lagina and his team stood at the rim of the money pit, staring into the darkness that had haunted treasure hunters for more than 2 centuries. Generations had come and gone, drawn by rumors of pirate gold and Templar secrets, but none had ever uncovered the truth. That was about to change. Rick had spent years chasing faint clues, old maps, and whispers of a hidden vault buried far below the island's marshy ground. Many had called it obsession, but for him it was purpose. Every failed dig, every flooded shaft, every sleepless night had led to this moment. When a weather-worn, leather-bound journal surfaced in Halifax, its brittle pages hinted at a secret so incredible it defied belief. The journal's ink had nearly faded, yet its words carried power. They spoke of an enormous treasure buried under Oak Island by a group of pirates who had vanished in the late 1600s. The pages included strange symbols, coded drawings, and rough diagrams that matched ancient Templar marks Rick had seen carved into stones around the island. Scholars believed the book was a forgery, but Rick saw something familiar in the symbols, a map hidden within the chaos. Days turned into weeks as experts analyzed every curve and mark. Each clue seemed to connect Oak Island with pirate captains who once ruled the Atlantic. William Kidd, Henry Avery, and others whose fortunes had disappeared without trace. The idea was staggering. What if Oak Island wasn't just a single treasure pit, but a vault, a hub for a secret network of pirates and privateers who used it as their bank? Rick couldn't ignore it. He gathered his crew, and under a gray November sky, they began their most daring excavation yet. The equipment was modern, high-pressure drills, sonar scanners, and ground-penetrating radar, but the danger was as ancient as ever. The island's soil was unstable, soaked through with centuries of flood traps designed to drown intruders. The first scans revealed something extraordinary. Beneath the known layers of the pit were several hollow chambers, too symmetrical to be natural. Sonar images showed straight lines, intersecting tunnels, and circular voids arranged with mathematical precision. Every reading whispered the same thing. There was intelligence behind the construction. Rick studied the data in silence. He could almost feel the presence of the men who had built it. Engineers of another age who had hidden their wealth so well that it had survived every attempt to steal it. His heart pounded as he gave the order to drill deeper. Hours passed. The whir of machines echoed across the clearing. Mud and water sprayed upward as the bit chewed through layers of wood and stone. Then, at a depth of nearly 160 feet, the drill struck something solid. Not rock, not clay, but timber bound with metal. When the core sample came up, it contained fragments of ancient oak and a trace of rusted iron. Rick knew at once they had found a door. A skull etched above 2 crossed keys. Pirate insignia. Excitement rippled through the camp. They were standing on the threshold of history. For hours, the team debated the safest way to break through without collapsing the tunnel. Every decision was critical. One mistake could flood the chamber or bury it forever. Storm clouds gathered above as they worked. Wind whipped across the island, carrying the scent of rain and salt. The air was thick with anticipation. When lightning cracked across the horizon, the crew took it as a sign. The same kind of omen that had followed every major discovery on Oak Island for centuries. Rick stood near the edge, his boots caked in mud, staring into the pit. He whispered to himself, "We're close." They lowered new supports and prepared the rig to breach the barrier. As drills cut through the final inches, water began to seep upward. Not a flood yet, but a warning. The engineers worked fast, sealing gaps and redirecting pressure. When the door finally gave way, the drill dropped several feet and stopped with a thud. hollow space had opened below. The sensors confirmed it, a large cavity roughly 30 feet wide and 20 feet high. The air inside was cold and still, untouched for centuries. Rick's pulse raced as the cameras descended. The first images flickered across the monitors. Rough stone walls, oak beams, and the faint glint of metal. It wasn't a natural cave. It was a chamber. The discovery electrified the camp. Reporters would later call it the moment Oak Island came alive again. But down in the pit, it was quiet. Only the sound of dripping water and the creak of wood under strain. The team gathered their gear, preparing to enter the chamber for the first time in history. The descent began at dawn. A rope ladder swayed in the cold wind as Rick and 2 others clipped harnesses and lowered themselves into darkness. Flashlights cut thin beams through the mist, illuminating the walls lined with hand-cut timbers darkened by age. Every breath felt heavy, carrying the damp smell of earth and salt. Step by step they went deeper until their boots touched the floor of the chamber. Silence surrounded them. The only sound was the slow drip of water from the ceiling. Then, out of the shadows, something shimmered. A reflection of light off metal. Rick moved closer. Embedded in the far wall was a plate of brass, engraved with the same symbols from the ceiling. Then, out of the shadows, something shimmered, a reflection of light off metal. Rick moved closer. Embedded in the far wall was a plate of brass, engraved with the same symbols from the journal. Beneath it, the ground was uneven, almost like a mound. They brushed away layers of soil until the shapes of chests began to emerge, curved lids, iron bindings, and faint traces of gold leaf still clinging to the wood. For a moment, no one spoke. Generations of mystery, endless failure, and decades of search had led to this single site. Treasure. Rick ran a gloved hand across one of the lids. "We found it," he said quietly. The air inside the chamber was thick, almost electric. Dust swirled through the flashlight beams like drifting ghosts, and the scent of old wood and iron filled their lungs. Rick could feel history pressing against him, the weight of centuries sealed in this vault. The team began to work methodically, documenting every inch. Cameras rolled, sensors scanned the walls. Every stone seemed deliberately placed, part of a structure built by minds far more advanced than mere pirates. The design looked almost architectural, as if someone had combined military engineering with sacred geometry. Rick knelt beside one of the chests. Its iron bands had corroded into a dull red, but the lock was still intact. The keyhole was oddly shaped, not round, but hexagonal, with tiny markings around the rim. He recognized one of them, the same symbol from the journal, the crossed keys beneath the skull. "Don't touch it yet," warned his brother Marty through the headset. "If there's a trap mechanism, we need to know before opening anything." Rick nodded. He knew the stories, how earlier explorers had died when flood tunnels suddenly burst, or when tunnels collapsed after disturbing a single stone. Every layer of the pit was rumored to be rigged with counterweights and pressure systems designed to protect whatever lay beneath. And Templars. When the symbols were translated, they spelled a single phrase. Quod absconditum est revelabitur. What is hidden shall be revealed. A chill ran through him. The words echoed through the chamber like a prophecy. Rick stepped back. "We open one," he said, "carefully." The crew prepared the equipment, small hydraulic cutters, cameras, and containment shields in case of gas release. Everyone moved slowly, every action deliberate. When the final latch gave way, the chest creaked open with a metallic groan. Inside lay layers of oilcloth and decayed leather, carefully wrapped around something heavy. Rick peeled them back, one by one, until the light caught the unmistakable glint of gold. Coins, thousands of them, Spanish doubloons, English guineas, French louis d'or, minted across 3 centuries, all stacked and sealed in waxed bundles. Some bore markings of pirate captains long thought lost to the sea. The room filled with disbelief. The treasure wasn't a myth anymore.
It was real, and it was beyond imagination. Rick's hands trembled as he lifted one coin to the light. The inscription read 1658, the year Captain Henry Avery vanished after raiding the Mughal fleet. Historians had always wondered what happened to his fortune. Now they knew. The other chests revealed more wonders. Strings of pearls, cut gemstones, silver bars stamped with foreign seals, and ornate artifacts, goblets, reliquaries, and gold crucifixes encrusted with rubies. But the real shock came from the final chest. It was smaller, sealed with a lead emblem bearing the mark of the Knights Templar. Inside, beneath layers of parchment, lay a rolled piece of animal hide. When Rick unrolled it, his breath caught. It was a map, not of Oak Island, but of the Atlantic, stretching from Nova Scotia to the Azores. Marked across it were dozens of small red crosses, each accompanied by symbols similar to those found on the chamber pillar. It wasn't just one treasure. It was a network. The implications were staggering. The pirates who hide their gold here hadn't simply chosen Oak Island at random. They were part of a secret alliance that spanned oceans, using a code of geometry, astronomy, and ancient Templar lore to conceal their riches. Rick's voice was low. This is bigger than we ever imagined. He turned toward the far wall, where faint carvings shimmered under the flashlight. Symbols again, but these glowed faintly, coated in what looked like a metallic sheen. He brushed away grime and revealed a circular emblem, a compass rose surrounding an eye. The ground beneath his feet shifted. A low rumble echoed through the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling. "Everybody out!" he shouted. The team scrambled toward the ladder as the noise deepened into a roar. The chamber floor began to crack, revealing fissures that glowed faintly gold. It wasn't light, it was reflection. Beneath the stone, another layer of treasure lay buried, trapped in a hidden vault below. They reached the surface moments before the floor gave way entirely. The chamber collapsed inward, sending a blast of air and dust through the shaft. The cameras went dead. For hours, they waited for the dust to settle, fearing the worst, that the treasure had been lost forever. But when they reviewed the data from the sensors, the readings told another story. There was still an empty cavity below, larger than the first. Rick knew what that meant. The real vault, the heart of Oak Island, was still waiting. Days turned into weeks as Rick Lagina and his crew worked to reach the second chamber. Engineers reinforced the collapsing tunnels, installing steel braces and new pumping systems to control the rising groundwater. Every hour of delay meant new risks. The island's unstable soil shifted unpredictably, and storms rolled in from the Atlantic without warning. But Rick refused to stop. The first chamber had proven the legends true. Somewhere below, beneath layers of flooded rock and mud, lay the core of Oak Island's mystery, the original vault the builders never intended anyone to reach. The sonar scans painted an eerie picture, a massive, circular chamber nearly 50 feet beneath the collapsed one. In the center, something metallic reflected the signals, a geometric object, cube-shaped, almost perfectly symmetrical. It was unlike anything they'd seen before. By late autumn, the team had drilled a new access shaft. It was risky. One wrong move and the tunnels could flood completely. The island had claimed lives before. Everyone knew the danger. Still, they pressed on. At dawn, Rick descended again, leading a small crew through the reinforced shaft. The air grew colder with every meter. When their boots touched the stone floor of the new chamber, all light seemed to fade. It wasn't just darkness, it was silence, total and heavy, as if the world above no longer existed. Their flashlights cut through the void. The walls were smooth, lined with fitted stones, unlike the rough construction above. In the center stood the cube. It wasn't gold or wood. It was made of some dark metal, black and seamless, polished to a mirror finish despite centuries underground. It was about 3 feet across, resting on a stone pedestal covered in carvings.
The symbols matched those in the journal and the map: Templar crosses, celestial diagrams, and mathematical spirals. Rick reached out to touch it. The moment his glove brushed the surface, a faint vibration ran through the floor. Instruments crackled with static. The cube emitted a soft hum, low, rhythmic, and deep enough to feel in the bones. "Power source?" one of the engineers whispered. Rick shook his head. "No. Something else." He noticed small grooves running across the cube's faces, tiny channels forming patterns too precise to be decorative. They weren't random. They were aligned to magnetic north. This wasn't treasure. It was technology, or something that mimicked it. In the corner of the chamber, half buried under debris, they found another chest. Inside were sealed tubes of parchment. The markings were fragile but legible. Rick unrolled one carefully. It wasn't a map this time. It was a letter. Written in archaic English, the message began, "To whosoever breaks the seal of this chamber, know that ye stand above the work of the Brotherhood of the Compass and the Cross. Within these stones lies the covenant of knowledge and gold, brought from the old world to the new, to preserve that which must never perish." The word sent shivers through the team. It went on to describe a voyage, a secret fleet that sailed from Europe long before Columbus, carrying both treasure and documents of immense power. Their mission? To safeguard the accumulated wealth and wisdom of their order from kings and empires who sought to destroy it. Oak Island was their vault. The cube, it seemed, wasn't part of the treasure. It was the lock. Rick examined the carvings again. The symbols weren't just decorative. They corresponded to the map coordinates found earlier. When plotted together, they formed a network of locations spanning the Atlantic. Every site marked a similar structure, hidden caches buried across continents, possibly holding the same kind of treasure or relics. "This isn't a legend," Rick murmured. "It's a system." The implications were staggering. The pirates of the 17th century hadn't just stolen gold. They had inherited a much older secret, one passed down through hidden brotherhoods who used them as guardians. The wealth of empires, the knowledge of lost orders, the forbidden science of the ancients, all preserved beneath Oak Island. But before Rick could document everything, the chamber began to tremble. The cube's hum deepened, vibrating the air like a pulse. Water started seeping through the cracks again. "Evacuate!" shouted Marty over the radio. They scrambled up the shaft as the ground shook. The hum turned into a roar, then silence. When they reached the surface, the entire site shuddered. A plume of mist rose from the pit, glowing faintly in the sunlight before fading away. When the air cleared, the entrance had sealed itself, as though the island had swallowed it whole once more. For hours, the team reviewed their footage. The recordings of the cube's vibration were corrupted, filled with static bursts that formed rhythmic patterns, not random noise, but structured intervals, a signal. Experts who later examined the data couldn't explain it. The frequency matched neither seismic activity nor human-made machinery. It was organized, almost like a form of coded communication. Government officials soon stepped in, citing safety concerns. The site was declared restricted and all excavation halted. Rick and Marty were forced to suspend operations indefinitely. The equipment was confiscated and the vaults sealed once again. But Rick never stopped studying the recordings. In his private notes he wrote, "It wasn't just treasure down there. It was a message, one that's been repeating for centuries. We weren't the first to find it, and we won't be the last." Weeks later, strange things began happening across Nova Scotia. Fishermen reported low humming sounds echoing through the water at night. Divers in Mahone Bay claimed their compasses spun wildly near the island. Some said the hum carried a rhythm, almost musical, almost like a heartbeat. Locals began calling it the pulse of Oak Island. Satellite scans later revealed electromagnetic interference centered directly beneath the old dig site. Official explanations blamed mineral deposits, but those who'd seen the cube knew better. Even now, years after the discovery, the hum continues, faint, constant, and precise.
Some believe it's just geological pressure releasing through underground channels. Others whisper that the cube wasn't a relic at all. It was a transmitter, sending signals to something beyond human reach. Whatever the truth, one thing remains certain. Rick Lagina found more than gold. He uncovered a secret buried beneath centuries of legend, a secret that refuses to sleep. Because Oak Island isn't just a place of lost treasure. It's a machine built by history itself, one that still hums beneath the waves, waiting for the next soul brave enough to dig deep enough to hear it. And when that day comes, the world may finally learn what the Brotherhood of the Compass truly meant by their final words, that which must never perish. Those final words echoed in Rick Lagina's mind for months after the dig was sealed. He couldn't shake them, the weight, the mystery, the warning. That which must never perish. It didn't sound like a simple reference to gold or jewels. It was something deeper, something sacred, maybe even dangerous. He spent countless nights reviewing every frame of footage they managed to save before the authorities shut them down. In the background of the corrupted video, behind the static and distortion, he could still hear it, that rhythmic pulse, like the heartbeat of the island itself. The sound wasn't random. He began noticing a pattern. The intervals repeated with mathematical precision, forming a cycle that reset every 88 seconds. When he plotted the signal graphically, it formed intricate waveforms, not unlike those found in acoustic resonance or musical harmonics. But when he compared them to known natural frequencies, earthquakes, ocean tides, electromagnetic pulses, none matched. It was deliberate, designed. Someone, or something, had built that cube with intention. Marty tried to convince him to let it go. The government had declared Oak Island a hazardous preservation zone, and no one was allowed within a mile of the original dig site. Surveillance drones patrolled the area, and any civilian craft approaching the island after dark was intercepted. But Rick couldn't stop. He knew what he'd seen. The craftsmanship of the cube, the precision of the carvings, the letter written centuries before his birth. It all pointed to an intelligence beyond mere pirates or treasure hoarders. This was the work of planners, engineers, and mathematicians long before modern tools even existed. Then, one evening, as the autumn winds swept through Mahone Bay, Rick received an anonymous envelope. Inside was a single sheet of aged parchment and a small metal medallion, tarnished but unmistakable. The medallion bore the same compass and cross emblem found in the chamber. Beneath it, written in faded ink, were 5 words: "The pulse has awakened again." Rick's heart raced. The handwriting wasn't ancient, it was modern, perhaps written only days earlier. Someone out there knew about the cube. Someone who had been watching. Determined to learn more, Rick quietly reassembled a small portion of his original crew. They met in secret, away from cameras and media, in a small cabin overlooking the water. The group included Dr. Naomi Harrington, the geophysicist who had previously studied strange frequency readings near the island. She brought with her a portable resonance analyzer and a modified underwater microphone capable of recording deep-frequency sound. Together, they launched a small fishing vessel under the cover of night and anchored it a few hundred yards off Oak Island's coast. The waves were calm, and the moonlight shimmered across the surface like silver glass. Naomi lowered the hydrophone into the water and powered the analyzer. For several minutes, there was only static. Then a low rumble began to emerge. Slow, rhythmic, familiar. The same pulse Rick had heard before, but stronger now, clearer. Naomi screamed.